And first at 5, we just got new information in on the breaking news that we've been following for the last hour. 2 different school buses in the Charlotte area in accidents today.
And there are reported injuries. Let's get right out to NBC Charlotte's Mark Boyle, who is live at the scene of one of those crashes. This is in the South Park area off of Providence Road. Mark, we understand that you have just learned some new information right there at the scene.
The accident happened right here behind me, as you mentioned, on Cloister and Providence. According to police, an SUV was coming out of the intersection right here at Cloister onto Providence Road, and police say the driver of the SUV did not look to the left, and so when he pulled out, he was T-boned by that bus. Here's some video from the scene and what we know right now. This all happened around 3:45 this afternoon. Investigators tell us 36 students were on board that bus. You're seeing the video on your screen. No students hurt. That's the good news. However, paramedics did rush the driver of the SUV and a passenger to the hospital to be treated for minor injuries. We did have 2 other school buses crash this morning. The first one happened around 8 o'clock at Central in Redmond. 4 students on board that bus, no severe injuries there. The second bus crash happened around 3:30 this afternoon on East 7th and North McDowell. According to investigators, there were 34 students on board that bus from Dilworth Elementary, no reported injuries. So again, the accident that happened right here, the driver of the SUV will be charged at fault for causing that crash. From reporting live in South Charlotte this afternoon, I'm Mark Boyle. Now back to you.
Thanks, Mark. We're going to continue to follow these investigations and bring you more on air and online at WCNC.com. The other big story today, the winter storm that's on its way. Here's a live look at Beach Mountain this afternoon, where they've actually had to make snow over the last couple of days and weeks, but that won't last long with this winter storm heading for the area a little bit later on this week.
We have live team coverage with NBC Charlotte's Dan Yasanowski standing by with how the DOT is preparing for this storm. But let's start with Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. Brad, what are things looking like right now? Where and when?
Well, we're starting to see the storm develop on the West Coast. We're looking at Friday night into Saturday morning. Now, we've got winter weather advisories to our north. That's not with the main storm, but we're starting to see the first winter storm watches issued for this system down in Alabama. That should give you an idea of the general track of this system. Here it is on the West Coast, just developing. A piece of this little energy is going to drop into the Gulf of Mexico tomorrow, and that's when we're going to see low pressure develop. Today, we've got this cold front moving through and snow heading towards the foothills and maybe the mountains later tonight. That's why we've got some winter weather advisories in Tennessee. But here's the main storm. It forms down here and quickly winds up and then moves north. And you see the snow band developing by Friday night into early Saturday. So the timing of this is really coming down to Friday into early Saturday. And depending on the speed, could be out of here quickly. Right now, we're going with this storm track where we're going to see at least light snow, 1 to 2 inches. But if the track should shift to the east, we could see lighter amounts. And if it tracks back to the west, this is a chance we could see higher amounts. So that track is still up in the air. Coming up, I'll show you which one we're really preferring right now and how much snow we're going to see across the air. We've got our first snowfall map for this storm coming up in just a few minutes, Beth.
Thanks so much, Brad. Now, there's plenty of work to be done when preparing for winter storms like this one, and we know how busy it can be for DOT crews clearing roads and utilities, restoring power outages that might happen.
NBC Charlotte's Dan Yasanowski is live for us tonight right along I-77 in West Charlotte from the Chevy Storm Tracker. Dan, this thing's still a few days away, but boy, the clock's sure ticking for everybody to get done what they need to get done, right?
Well, this is really that final day to formulate a plan of attack for these agencies, and they told me with each year of winter weather, new lessons are learned. With snow in the forecast for Friday into Saturday, NCDOT says they'll start pre-treating the roads Thursday morning.
It should take the bulk of the day to get done, and then if we don't get done before, say, 4 p.m., we'll let the drivers have the road for rush hour, and then we'll go back tomorrow evening and try to wrap up.
SCDOT says they'll start Thursday as well, but they're fully stocked up on supplies. Thompson says they're fortunate that this is supposed to be a weekend storm that won't impact schools.
We probably won't get our crews back till later Friday night to start staffing, making sure we have all of our equipment ready to go out and respond to whatever falls into Saturday.
Whatever falls can have very different impacts for Duke Energy. Megan Miles talked about the difference in the amount of ice versus the amount of snow that can be problematic.
When there's more than 6 inches of wet, heavy snow or more than 1/4 inch of ice, that's when we'll see tree limbs break and fall onto power equipment and cause outages for our customers.
We've seen plenty of both snow and ice in our major storms in previous years, causing slick roads and keeping power crews busy.
Our team of meteorologists are continuing to monitor weather conditions to make sure we have the latest information and can plan accordingly.
Now, if rain comes before the snow, it can wash away some of that brine and cause issues on the roads. DOT addresses that, and Duke Energy tells us about a new text alert system for outages for their customers. All that's coming up at 6 o'clock. Live on I-77, Dan Yasanowski, NBC Charlotte.
It's good information for everybody. Thanks so much, Dan. Now, we are following more breaking news right now about an armed robbery investigation. Listen to this. Detectives with CMPD have just charged a local church leader with multiple counts related to robberies at local businesses. So let's get out to NBC Charlotte's Ty Chandler right now. Ty, what do we know? This is shocking information to hear.
Yes, we do understand that the pastor of True Love Refuge Church is John Thomas Lindsay, but police telling us they believe he was filling his personal collection plate by holding up convenience stores. Now, they've been looking for him for a number of weeks. They captured images of him on surveillance videos of a robbery at a Circle K and a 7-Eleven. They believe he would go in with a gun, steal cash, and then run off. But after further investigation, police have now linked Lindsay to 9 armed robberies. Now, his church, the True Love Church of Refuge, they were supposed to have service later tonight. That has been canceled. They did post a message on their Facebook page. That message says they're deeply saddened and disappointed that their leader, John Thomas Lindsay, is facing charges associated with criminal activity. They say they still love him and pray for him, even though they denounce these charges, but also say the ministry will continue. That's the latest here in Southwest Charlotte. I'm Ty Chandler, NBC Charlotte.
Thanks, Ty. Today, for the very first time, convicted Charleston church shooter Dylan Roof addressed the jury that convicted him on all 33 counts. The same jury will now decide whether or not he lives or dies, as Roof is representing himself during the sentencing phase.
There are no cameras allowed in the federal courtroom, but NBC Charlotte's Savannah Levens is there for us. She joins us live right now outside of the courthouse in Charleston. Savannah, what happened in court today?
You know, it's still ongoing, and we've heard some really emotional testimony. Right now, the prosecution's third witness is on the stand. So far, they've called friends and family of those victims. And this is the first day of the sentencing phase of this trial, in which Roof is representing himself. In his opening statement, he addressed the jury and said the reason that he wanted to remove his lawyers is because he did not want to make a mental health plea. He said there's nothing wrong with him psychologically.
Shock. I mean, everybody was completely shocked that somebody would do something so senseless.
More than a year after the Charleston massacre, we will soon know the fate of Dylan Roof.
I think he should die. I think that's what's going to happen.
The prosecution saying over the next few days they will submit horrific new evidence that they hope will convince the jury to sentence Roof to the death penalty, including journal entries penned by Roof in prison in which he states he has not shed a single tear for the 9 people he killed.
You know, disgust. Absolute disgust.
Roof is representing himself in this part of the trial, saying he made that decision because his lawyers would have forced him into a mental health plea.
The only thing that's going to save his life, I think, is if they plead some sort of mental case, and he doesn't want that because I think he's sort of proud of what he did.
Senator Clementa Pinckney's widow took the stand for over an hour, recalling how she and their 6-year-old daughter hid under a desk in the church as shots rang out. The prosecution plans to call several more witnesses, mostly loved ones of the victims. Now, keep in mind, because Roof is representing himself, he can and is allowed to cross-examine those witnesses. So far, he has opted not to do so. Reporting live in Charleston, I'm Savannah Levens for NBC Charlotte.
Savannah, thank you.
Tonight, CMPD detectives are still looking for 2 men suspected of shooting a 14-year-old son of a Kannapolis police officer. The boy died yesterday after being shot while visiting relatives here in Charlotte. NBC Charlotte's Rad Berkey is live at CMPD headquarters. Rad, you actually talked with the teenager's family, their friends. I know that they're so heartbroken.
Well, really, that is so true. You know, we hear so much about kids who get into trouble these days. Anthony Frazier was not one of those, and his death has certainly touched everyone who knew him.
Very sad, sudden, tragic loss.
Gerald Griggs is the basketball coach at Kannapolis Middle School.
Third one from the right.
Where 14-year-old Anthony Frazier was a standout player and team leader.
Didn't try to do it, you know, so much so with his words, but just was a hard worker and led by example.
Frazier was visiting his aunt and uncle in Charlotte this week. He was in their car as they were pulling into the driveway of their home when they saw 2 men apparently trying to break in. They tried to back out and drive away, but as they did, one of the men fired into the car. They drove to this nearby convenience store to call for help, but Anthony would not make it. He was the son of Kannapolis police officer Daniel Frazier. The department released a statement saying the Kannapolis Police Department is heartbroken. We are stunned that once again a senseless tragedy has impacted the lives of our children and our officers. Back at his school, counseling was offered to students who'd lost a teammate and a friend.
His friendliness and his demeanor, his respect to everybody, he was just an all-around good kid.
And coming up at 6 o'clock, more from people who knew him and word of a $5,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. All that at 6 o'clock. Live at CMPD headquarters, Rad Berkey, NBC Charlotte.
I know this is a tough story to report on, Rad. Thank you so much.
We're following breaking news here at 5. A North Carolina district attorney has just decided not to press charges against a Charlotte police officer after a shooting last April. This is footage from the scene back then in West Charlotte when a man threatened to take his own life. SWAT officers negotiated with him, and when he raised his gun, they fired. After investigating, officials came to the conclusion today that Officer Olin Lester acted lawfully and will not face any charges for his actions. New at 5, Governor Roy Cooper urging North Carolina business leaders to support his efforts to repeal HB 2 and bring more money back into the state. Speaking in an annual economic forecast event, Governor Cooper told people there he'll be an aggressive recruiter to bring jobs in and would work on programs to help small business. Governor Cooper also said he plans to file an amendment to the state's Medicaid plan by Friday in order to allow for expansion.
A day after the new Congress was sworn in, Republicans say repealing Obamacare is their #1 priority, but it's not clear what is going to take its place. Meantime, President Obama is trying to preserve his signature health care law. NBC's Steve Handelsman has the latest from Washington, where the president spent the day in closed-door meetings.
President Obama came to the Capitol to rally Democrats to take their fight for Obamacare to the American people. And the Democrats' new Senate leader did.
The Republican plan to cut health care wouldn't make America great again. It would make America sick again and lead to chaos.
Donald Trump tweeted, "Massive increases of Obamacare will take place this year, and Dems are to blame for the mess." Vice President-elect Mike Pence went to the Hill to rally Republicans.
The first order of business is to repeal and replace Obamacare.
But with what, Republicans still don't know.
We want to make sure that there's an orderly transition so that the rug is not pulled out from under the families who are currently struggling under Obamacare.
They admit the GOP alternative might not kick in for 2 years.
It's because a replacement plan you won't know till this summer, and that's even too late to put forth new plans for 2018.
Obamacare is working to get coverage for more Americans. Just 11% now have no insurance. But the average premium cost is now $18,000. That's up 26%. President Obama stepping up his argument that undoing his health care law instead of tweaking it will hurt the nation.
Look out for the American people.
And will politically wound Republicans. Congress will soon vote a repeal. The new president will roll back Obamacare with executive orders. But then comes the big fight, the long fight over what will be in and what will not be in Trump care. Live from the Capitol, Steve Handelsman, NBC Charlotte.
I think the big question a lot of people want to know is, okay, if they repeal it, what is going to replace it? I know that Trump has said he wants to keep pre-existing conditions covered. He wants people to be able to have their kids on their care until they're 26 years old. Right. But there's a lot more to deal with here, and it doesn't sound like we have a lot of solutions yet.
No, they don't have solutions. The Republicans admit it, Beth. They say yes, and some of them say reluctantly yes. We hear Donald Trump, we're going to keep those two parts of Obamacare that a lot of people seem to like. But how to get more people insured at a lower cost and drive costs down across the board, real tough.
People definitely want to see that. Thank you so much, Steve. Always love having you.
Coming up, video that everybody in the country is talking about. Hear a teen's parents' plea after a school resource officer slammed their daughter to the ground.
And a mass murderer, Charles Manson, possibly out of prison right now, where he might have gone.
And more than 100 people hurt after a train derailment happened in Brooklyn. The video showing the aftermath. We'll have more on this story and how it happened coming up next.